Let me take you on a journey, my friends. I want you to close your eyes and imagine the dusty outskirts of Ouagadougou. Imagine a woman, a widow of 60 years, whose hands are as weathered and as strong as the roots of an ancient baobab tree. For 3 generations, her family had raised poultry on that very plot of land. It was not just a business, it was a sacred legacy. It was the honest labor that paid for the school uniforms of her grandchildren. It was the trade that put sturdy shoes on their feet and provided fresh, healthy food for her entire neighborhood. She knew the song of every bird in her flock. She would wake long before the first light of dawn to mix the feed and check the water. Her birds were strong. Her business was a pillar of the local community. But then, a slow and silent invasion began to creep across the borders of Burkina Faso. It did not come with the sound of trumpets or the clatter of weapons. No, it came in a never-ending line of massive refrigerated trucks rolling across the land like a cold iron plague. These trucks were not carrying gifts. They were carrying thousands upon thousands of tons of frozen, factory-farmed poultry from the distant lands of Europe. But listen closely, for here is the deception. This was not the premium meat sold in the bright, expensive supermarkets of Paris or Berlin. No, my brothers and sisters, these were the discarded parts. The wings, the necks, the bone-heavy pieces that European consumers simply did not want to put on their plates. Instead of paying the high price to dispose of this massive industrial waste, the European agricultural giants froze it into solid, pale blocks and shipped it across the great ocean to be dumped into our markets. How could they do this? Because those foreign corporations received heavy government subsidies back home. They could sell this frozen waste at prices that no local African farmer could ever possibly match. It was a rigged game from the very start. Within a single year, that proud widow found herself selling her birds at a heavy loss just to buy a single loaf of bread for her family. Eventually, she had no choice but to sell her last remaining hens. Her wooden coops, once filled with the vibrant sounds of life, went completely silent. The vibrant local markets of the capital were suddenly flooded with pale, freezer-burnt meat that had been dead for many months. And the foreign corporations and their political allies called this process free trade. But the men and women who worked the soil knew the absolute, bitter truth. This was not trade. This was a dumping of the worst kind. It was an economic slaughter. This devastation was not a random accident of the free market. It was a highly calculated system designed to crush self-reliance on the African continent. For when a nation loses the ability to feed its own people, when its hardworking farmers are driven into bankruptcy by foreign dumping, that nation becomes inherently dependent. It becomes obedient to the powers that supply its food. It becomes a beggar in its own home. For decades, previous administrations had quietly accepted this humiliating arrangement, and they bowed down to the relentless pressure of international trade organizations and foreign embassies. They stood by and watched their own rich agricultural heritage vanish, replaced by imported garbage. The profound pride of the independent African farmer was being systematically erased from our culture. Fathers could no longer pass down their honorable trade to their sons because there was no money left in the dirt. The soil of Burkina Faso was rich, and the people were desperately willing to work. But the global financial system was completely rigged against them. It is a heartbreak that resonates deeply with any person on earth who understands the sacred value of hard work, family legacy, and independence. To work with your own hands, to raise life from the earth, and to feed your community is one of the most dignified acts a human being can perform in this life. Stripping that basic dignity away leaves a profound and lasting scar on the soul of a nation. But my friends, do not be mistaken. This was not an accident. This was a blueprint for a deeper, darker control. And the question remains, how can a child grow strong when his dinner is decided in a boardroom thousands of miles away? But brothers and sisters, we serve a God who sees the tears of the widow and hears the silence of the empty coop. And when the darkness seemed its deepest, a light began to flicker in the heart of the motherland. It did not come from a university in London or a bank in Washington. It came from the quiet, unshakable authority of a man who looked at the suffering of his people and said, "Enough is enough." I am talking about the definitive moment when Ibrahim Traoré stood up and drew a line in the fertile sand of Burkina Faso. He did not look at this agricultural crisis through the sterile lens of complex international trade theories. He did not waste time staring at World Bank spreadsheets that were designed to explain away our poverty. No, he looked directly through the eyes of his own people. He saw the empty wooden coops that had once been the pride of the villages. He saw the thousands of young men standing idle, their strength wasting away because they could no longer find work in the dirt. He saw the imported, low-quality waste dominating the local markets. And he made a decision that sent absolute shockwaves through the global agricultural establishment. The decree issued from the government was absolute, immediate, and without a single inch of room for compromise. He announced a total, nationwide ban on the importation of all frozen European poultry. Can you imagine the scene, my friends? There were no lengthy, polite negotiations with foreign ambassadors. There were no phased-in timelines designed to protect the quarterly profits of massive corporations. And there were certainly no apologies issued to the West. At the national borders, the music changed. Those massive refrigerated trucks, which had made this run 100 times before, treating our country like an open landfill, were suddenly and firmly halted by the security forces. The gates were slammed shut. The foreign corporate executives, sitting comfortably in their glass offices thousands of miles away in Europe, stared at their computer screens in total disbelief. They thought the dumping ground was theirs forever, but they forgot that the soil belongs to the people who walk upon it. But listen to the wisdom of this leader. Ibrahim Traoré is a strategist. He knew that simply banning the foreign poison was not nearly enough to save his country. You cannot just cut off a food supply without providing a massive and immediate alternative for the population. So the government took a revolutionary step that redefined the very concept of national support. They unlocked millions of dollars in sovereign state funds and directed it straight to the working class. Now, hear me clearly. This was not a deceptive system of predatory loans designed by foreign banks to trap local farmers in endless, soul-crushing debt. This was not the International Monetary Fund coming to save us by shackling us. This was direct, unconditional capital provided straight to the local farmers. This was the government saying to the widow, "We see you, we honor you, and we will back you." The elderly widow in Ouagadougou, who had stared at her empty, dusty coops for years with a broken heart, suddenly felt the strength of her own nation behind her. She bought hundreds of new chicks. She secured high-quality, locally grown feed. And within a matter of weeks, the most beautiful sound in the world returned to her backyard. The roosters were crowing again under the African sun. Across the entire nation, the thousands upon thousands of small family farms began to spring back to life with incredible speed. This is the true meaning of food sovereignty. It is the power to decide what goes into the stomachs of your children. Local market vendors began throwing out those old freezer-burnt boxes and proudly replacing them with fresh, healthy, locally raised meat. The millions of dollars that used to flow straight out of the country to enrich foreign conglomerates were now circulating right where they belong, in the pockets of the Burkinabe people. In the wealthy capitals of Washington and Brussels, the corporate reaction was immediate and fierce. They were losing millions of pounds every single week, and they were not going to let their garbage disposal go without a fight. They began to whisper threats. They began to draft legal papers. And they began to talk about international norms and trade violations. But they failed to see that a lion that has finally found its voice will never go back to being a lamb. They failed to see that once a people have tasted the unmatched dignity of self-reliance, they will never again be satisfied with the scraps from a master's table. The empire is gathering its strength, and the corporate giants are sharpening their swords, determined to crush this rebellion before it spreads across the entire continent. But as the pressure mounts, a question hangs in the air, heavy and thick like the heat before a storm. How long can a small nation stand against the combined might of the global financial machine when it decides that the garbage must stay on the menu? Now, my brothers and sisters, I want you to look at the scoreboard of history. And the experts in their sterile offices in Brussels and Washington told us that we were nothing without their permission. They told us that if we wanted to build anything, a road, a school, or a factory, we had to crawl to the International Monetary Fund and sign away the future of our grandchildren for a few silver coins. They said we were too poor to dream and too broken to build. But oh, how the wisdom of the world is foolishness in the eyes of a people who have finally decided to be free. Let me tell you about a miracle that is happening right now in the city of Bobo Dioulasso. While the Western media was busy predicting chaos and collapse, Ibrahim Traoré was quietly organizing a revolution of the spirit. He did not go to the foreign bankers to beg for a loan. No. He went to the school teacher in the capital city. So he went to the small shop owner in the village. He went to the grandmother selling vegetables in the market. He asked them a simple question. Do you believe in yourselves? And the answer was a thunderous roar of yes. In a staggering 14 months, something appeared on the horizon that the world said was impossible. A massive, state-of-the-art tomato processing factory rose from the red earth of Burkina Faso. And listen to this, for it will make your soul rejoice. This $12 million facility was not built with the poisonous conditional grants of the European Union. It was not built with the heavy, soul-crushing chains of the World Bank. 80% of the funding for this industrial giant came directly from the ordinary citizens of Burkina Faso through a revolutionary popular shareholding scheme. The remaining 20% came from the state itself. This is community ownership in its purest, most sacred form. It is a nation putting its money where its heart is, refusing to wait for a foreign savior who only comes to steal and to destroy. Imagine the profound dignity of that moment, my friends. Picture a young teacher taking her modest savings, money she could have spent on her own immediate needs, and instead buying a piece of her country's future. When she looks at that factory today, she is not looking at a cold building of concrete and steel. She is looking at her own property. She is looking at her own independence. This is the very foundation of food sovereignty. It is the understanding that you cannot be truly free if your daily bread is controlled by a man who does not love you. Ibrahim Traoré understood that to win the war, you must first win the battle for the stomach. He knew that every single tomato grown on the sacred soil of Burkina Faso must feed their own people, provide jobs for their own youth, and stock their own grocery stores. They told us we were a liability, but we proved we are an asset. They told us we were a debt, but we proved we are a capital. For decades, the continent was trapped in a vicious cycle. Extract the raw material, ship it to a foreign port, and buy it back as a finished product at 10 times the price. That cycle was designed to keep us permanently impoverished. But today, a Burkinabe mother no longer has to buy tomato paste imported from Italy or China. She buys a product grown on her soil and processed in a factory owned by her brothers and sisters. And this is economic warfare of the most righteous kind. It is a declaration to the global financial elite that their days of predatory lending are numbered. For when a people realize that they hold the keys to their own treasury, the gates of the empire begin to tremble. But I must ask you today, my family, do you believe that we can build a future where we never have to beg for a loan again? Do you believe that our own hands are enough to raise our people from the dust? Write your answer in the comments, for we need to hear the voice of the faithful. But do not get comfortable, for as the light of self-reliance grows brighter in Burkina Faso, a shadow is falling over the boardrooms of the West. They are watching and they are terrified, for they know that a miracle like this cannot be contained within one single border. The fire is spreading, and the question is, who will be the next to stand? But I want you to look across the great blue ocean with me today, for the spirit of truth is moving in places you would never expect. While the corporate masters in Europe are gnashing their teeth, something beautiful is happening in the American heartland. I want you to picture a man, 65 years of age, sitting on a porch in Kansas or Nebraska. His hands are scarred from a lifetime of working the soil, and his eyes have seen the same sorrow that we see in the villages of Africa. This American farmer has watched his neighbors go bankrupt one by one. He has seen the family farms that stood for generations systematically crushed by the exact same massive agricultural conglomerates that tried to turn Burkina Faso into a dumping ground. He knows what it feels like to wake up every morning with the rules completely stacked against the independent producer. When this man hears about the courage of Ibrahim Traoré, he does not feel a shred of anger, no. He feels a deep, unspoken respect. He recognizes a leader who is actually standing up for the little guy. He sees a fight for survival that is the same in the Midwest as it is in the Sahel. For the enemy is the same. The corporate giants that poison the American food system with chemicals and greed are the very same ones shipping their waste to our brothers and sisters across the sea. And the cry for justice is echoing even further. We hear the voices from Jamaica, where the people are weeping for a leader with the vision and the strength to protect their own land. We hear the cry from Romania in the east of Europe, where a sister tells us that her nation's wealth was stolen by traders and handed over to foreign powers. They are all looking to the Sahel because they see that the light of food sovereignty is finally breaking through the darkness. This is not just a regional dispute over poultry or tomatoes. This is a global rebellion against a rigged financial order. From the bustling streets of India to the sprawling agricultural heartlands of Brazil, the developing nations are taking meticulous notes. They are seeing that it is possible to step outside the matrix of debt and dependency. The architects of the old world are terrified, for they know that if the garbage disposal of Africa stops working, their entire system of exploitation will begin to collapse. They see the independent farmers of the world beginning to stand in solidarity, and it sends a chill through their gated communities. But do not be deceived, for the empire will not go quietly into the night. Even as the people of the world begin to unite, the shadows are lengthening. The corporate giants are gathering their lawyers, their lobbyists, and their media machines to strike back with a fury we have never seen. The question is no longer, can they survive? The question is, what happens when the giant finally decides to burn the whole house down just to keep his control? But I tell you today, my beloved, the vision is growing larger than any one man and stronger than any single border. The experts in their ivory towers predicted that Burkina Faso would collapse into starvation and chaos within months of shutting their gates to the foreign waste. They sat in their offices, waiting for the white flag of surrender to be raised over Ouagadougou. But they forgot one thing. You cannot starve a people who have finally remembered how to plant their own seeds in their own soil. Look to the horizon, for the light is spreading across the dusty plains of the Sahel. The neighboring allied nations of Mali and Niger are not just watching, they are preparing. Their leaders have seen that the chicken war was not a desperate gamble, but a masterful declaration of independence. They have seen that when you protect your own will rise to support you. Through the newly formed Alliance of Sahel States, a massive shield is being forged, a shield of food sovereignty that no foreign sanction can penetrate. They are holding high-level strategic meetings right now, discussing how to implement the very same protective blocks. For they see that Mali has the gold, Niger has the uranium and the oil, and together, they have the collective will to feed their children without asking for a single cent from the masters of the old world. The joint television networks of this new military alliance are broadcasting the beautiful success stories of the local family farmers, proving to every soul in West Africa that the dream is alive and it is working. We must acknowledge the regret of the decades we spent wandering in the wilderness of dependency, listening to the silver-tongued lies of those who wanted our resources but despised our people. But that season is over. The power of the Creator is moving over these leaders, and the ancestors are smiling down upon this journey. Ibrahim Traoré has provided more than just tractors and poultry. He has provided a blueprint for a continent that has been thirsty for justice for over 400 years. But let us be clear-eyed, for the road ahead is narrow and full of shadows. The international financial empires are not going to simply walk away from their billions in profits without a vicious and destructive fight. They will try to manipulate the markets, they will try to weaponize the news, and they will try to sow seeds of doubt amongst the brothers and sisters of the alliance. They want to see the fire of the Sahel extinguished before it reaches the rest of the world. The question that remains for us, the elders and the watchers, is this. When the empire strikes back with everything in its arsenal, will the people of the sun stand firm? Or will the weight of the world finally crush the dream? As we draw to a close today, my family, I want you to leave the grand halls of the United Nations in your mind. Leave the cold boardrooms of Paris and the towering banks of Washington. Travel with me, one last time, to a small, dusty village in the heart of Burkina Faso. Imagine an elderly grandfather, a man whose back has been bent by years of humiliation. For his entire long life, he has watched foreign aid trucks roll into his village, delivering small bags of imported grain while telling his proud people that they were simply too poor and too uneducated to feed themselves. But today, something is different. Today, he is kneeling down in the warm, familiar dirt next to his young, wide-eyed grandson. For the very first time in 20 long years, he is carefully placing a small, healthy, locally hatched chick into the young boy's hands. Listen to me now. He is not just teaching that child how to raise an animal. He is proudly passing down a sacred, generational legacy that was almost entirely erased by foreign greed. He is looking that boy directly in the eye and telling him with absolute certainty that he belongs to a strong, highly capable people. A people who do not ever need to rely on the discarded scraps of the first world. He is actively handing that child the incredibly powerful, priceless gift of food sovereignty. That, my brothers and sisters, is a kind of profound wealth that no foreign central bank can ever regulate. No international trade court can ever possibly take it away, and no Western sanction can ever destroy it. This is the eternal, enduring strength of a proud nation that has finally, irreversibly decided to stand on its own 2 feet. And we must give thanks for the courage that sparked this fire. The multi-generational legacy that Ibrahim Traoré is currently building is not written in fragile diplomatic treaties. It is deeply and permanently carved into the fertile soil of a rapidly rising nation. Ibrahim Traoré has shown the entire global South that the giant only possesses real power if we agree to blindly believe in its paper currency. The era of begging is officially over. The era of claiming our own wealth has begun. If you believe that dignity and justice still mean something in this world, I need you to act right now. Write the name of your city in the comments below so your voice is officially recorded as a part of this historical awakening. Let them see that from Jamaica to Romania, wandering from the American Midwest to the heart of the Sahel, we are standing together in the light. Do not forget to subscribe to this channel and share this message with everyone you love. May the Creator protect your journey, and may the ancestors smile upon our rising. Until next time, stay strong, stay awake, and never surrender your soil.